Hey, 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 everyone, it's time for Sunday School Bonanza, a This Week in Mormons production. We are here to bring you a rundown of the Gospel Doctrine lessons so that you can go to Gospel Doctrine and be prepared. Let this be a supplement to your personal study. That's the goal we are aiming for with this lesson and what we do. Please visit us, by the way, at thisweekinmormons.com, where we publish this and many other podcasts pertaining to Mormonism. And also what I want you to do is I want you to go to LeadingLDS.com, where you can read great blog posts and listen to podcasts specifically on leadership within the church and how we can improve our role as leaders in particular.
Thanks for the plug, Jeff.
You're welcome. And that is done by Kurt Francom, the founder and chairman of LeadingLDS. Bishop, nice to have you here.
Well, thank you, President. You're my inspiration as you guide those elders in your quorum. You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if we should say this on the air, but I like that, we all know that Kurt's a bishop, but Kurt tells nobody in his bishop life that he has Leading LDS, which is funny because Leading LDS, it's not like he's running ordained women or anything, or Leading LDS is like a totally benign website with good stuff, but I like that you just got to keep it separate from everything
That's right.
else.
Hey, I don't want to be, promoting things. Go visit leadinglds.com.
Yeah. And I could also understand as a leader, you wouldn't want people to mix it. I don't know. Like, you don't want people to necessarily mix it up what you're producing there for the benefit of the church at large with, like, official counsel from you as a bishop.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I started Leading LDS is was because I was a mindless, confused leader, and I thought, man, I wish there was a resource online where other leaders could come and share their ideas. I'm definitely not trying to be the leadership guru by any means, but more. It
sounds to me like you are teaching a teaching and trying to replace something. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out apostasy rhetoric at you.
I invite you all to my protest. Thank you.
No, but I hear it. But it's a good website. I think Leading LDS is very useful, but we need to bring you up into the upper echelon. Not that I occupy the upper echelon of Mormon stuff. I don't, but
you know a guy. So.
We can hold hands and jump together, okay? How does that sound? We'll make that happen.
So
our lesson
weird,
this week, folks, is lesson 31, Happy is the Man that Findeth Wisdom. This lesson is all about Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Very similar in many ways to the lesson we had in the past on the Psalms, where it's just sort of a pick and choose kind of thing. So the Proverbs, by the way, just so we understand, really translates to wisdom literature. So it talks about human evaluations compared to, say, the books of the prophets. So a lot of wise instruction, sage wisdom, as they describe it. And I believe we learn in 1 Kings chapter 4 that Solomon actually gave, about 3,000 Proverbs?
He had some time on his hands. 3,000
Proverbs and 1,000 songs. So just remember that when you're thinking of Songs of Solomon. It could have been a lot worse, everybody. Okay, not everything that Solomon said is included in the Old Testament. And the Ecclesiastes contain reflections on just some of the deepest problems of life, I guess you could say it. So they're related, but they deal sort of in different areas of rumination in a way. Ecclesiastes is a little more reflexive, I think, in a way. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, at the beginning of this lesson, throughout this lesson, they're very basic core concepts. We've got wisdom, pride, raising children, and the writers of this lesson must have thought, well, this may be hard to fill some time with. So they give us two attention activities, and they suggest a 5-minute video clip called "Trusting in the Lord" that you can show.
They're trying to pad this one out.
I don't know if that's what they're doing, but that's how I interpret it.
Everyone, just bring a game of Monopoly with you. That's just...
As a backup, you may have to bust that out. But also, I'll just point out that in the additional teaching ideas, it gives a Proverbs activity. It says, write several references from the book of Proverbs on separate slips of paper and put them in a bowl. Have the class members take turns choosing a slip of paper from the bowl, reading the passage of Scripture cited on the slip of paper, and explain how the passage applies to our lives. I think that'd be great. Just do that for 50 minutes.
And I think also, but one of the other things you could do is instead divvy those out beforehand. Sometimes I feel like we lose a little bit in lessons because we ask people things on the spot. and they don't have time to really ponder them. And that works in many instances, and it's fine, and it might work well in this based on your class. But also it might help to just give those out beforehand and say, hey, here's this scripture. Will you read this, and will you think about this? And when I call on you, you can have something to say.
Yeah,
and so,
that'll work.
And that gives people time to really, really ponder, and they're ready. And I think that helps them also be engaged in the lesson. The other attention activity, you write A through F, a bunch of statements with some blanks, and then by reading various proverbs, you fill in the blank effectively. So things like, pride goeth before destruction, train up a child in the way he should go. To everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under the heavens. Just stuff like that.
And my favorite is, a soft answer turneth away wrath, which is Proverbs 15:1.
And it's actually really true.
Mm-hmm.
I kid you not. Well, there's a section on here where we're going to talk a little bit about being soft-spoken. And I struggle with being soft-spoken. I can actually jump into that. We can do whatever section we want in any order we want.
That's right.
This lesson has no flow. I would say that's definitely something that I can naturally struggle with. The words we speak have immense value. You read Proverbs 6, actually. It talks about 7 things that the Lord hates. Okay? So I'm going to read these. The 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. Okay? A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift and runneth in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among his brethren. Now, if you notice that, 3 of those things, lying, bearing false witness, and sowing discord, apply to the words we speak, which I think is very interesting. 3 of those things, that's a big chunk of them, talk about what we can say. So why go ahead.
I was going to reference the quote by Elder Gordon B. Hinckley that was given in April of 1971. He says, "We seldom get into trouble when we speak softly. It is only when we raise our voices that the sparks fly and tiny molehills become great mountains of contention." Take that to your marriage. It'll save it.
It will. And think about this. I would say, how many times in priesthood meeting have we been encouraged to speak softly and be kind to those around us, particularly the women in our lives? More times than I can count. I feel especially so under President Hinckley now that I think about it compared to President Monson. And
more evidence, Jeff, that the authors of this lesson were trying to fill time. At the end of this section, it says, to reinforce the importance of speaking kind words, you may have the class members sing, "Let us oft speak kind words."
Okay, let's talk. Let me talk. See, this is why I'm such a cynic. The hymn, "Let us oft speak kind words," was something my mom would sing to us when we would fight as children. And so it's like this cliche in my head that if I'd be bickering with one of my siblings, my mom would be like, "Let us oft speak kind words to each other." And we'd all look at her and just say, like, "Shut up, Mom."
Such a good Mormon mom there.
Though, in her defense, I believe that united us against a common enemy. And so then we stopped fighting. So it worked out. It worked brilliantly, probably in the way she didn't intend.
So your mother became the enemy.
and when your enemy's enemy is your friend, suddenly your enemy's no longer your enemy. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, but I think it's very fair. It's the words we say are extremely valuable. It's so easy to be a little too quick, a little too harsh. I had an experience, actually. I think I can share this one. I hope my wife will allow it. Where I got up one morning, and I don't know if I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but in the few minutes I'd stumbled out of bed and maybe grabbed some breakfast and I decided to walk to the shower, I didn't really realize I'd said 3 critical things to my wife in succession. And I did not understand why by the third one she was visibly annoyed with me. And I was just like, "What's your problem, man? Come on." But and I kid you not, one of these things I advised was telling her how to brush her teeth appropriately. Okay?
Please look for Jeff's book coming out about techniques of brushing teeth.
No, please look for my great book called Foot in Mouth. It's going to be called Foot in Mouth, a memoir. And so this taught me a very important lesson that when we are, like you said before, Kurt, we got to be measured and careful, because it's very easy if we're not aware of ourselves, even if we're not trying to be mean or critical or whatever else, to inadvertently be so. And it can hurt those around us, even if we don't mean to do that. And I think both of us can, you as a bishop and me with the elders quorum, there's a lot of value in that too. I feel like I have to hold myself to a standard, so I try to be careful even things I say in public. I even find myself on the podcasts we do with This Week in Mormons trying to be a little bit more measured than I used to be, because I feel like I have a responsibility to uphold a certain standard to not have anything that would come back and reflect poorly on me or on the church or whatever else.
You need a home full of Post-it notes that have Proverbs written on each one.
I think if I put Proverbs on the ceiling above me when I'd wake up, none of these follies would have happened. I hope Danielle's not mad at me for sharing that story, because it only makes me look bad. She's a saint. She's a great person.
But
Danielle
in that
basically wrote
story,
the Proverbs.
In that story, I find a lot of happiness and good humor, and that's actually one of the sections. Did you see that segue? You see what happened there?
Yeah, take me there.
So number 7, and there's not a lot here, but whenever there's opportunity to speak about good humor and the gospel, I think you should jump at it. President Hugh B. Brown.
It's so rare. Yes.
And we see a lot of our leaders do that in General Conference when we have a beloved prophet that is even willing to wiggle his ears during a priesthood session. Such good humor that really adds to the spirit of meetings. Yeah,
President Monson does. He has a healthy sense of humor. He enjoys kind of poking fun at himself and everything too. So it's fun.
Yes. Hugh B. Brown. Okay. There's a quote in the lesson. It says, "I would like to have you smile because after all, we must keep a sense of humor whatever comes. I think of all the people in the world, we should be the happiest. We have the greatest and most joyous message in the world. I think when we get on the other side, someone will meet us with a smile. Unless we go to the wrong place, and then someone will grin. So let us be happy, but let our happiness be genuine. Let it come from within." There you have kind of a weird reference to a grin there, but we should be a happy people and in good humor. Obviously, there is a fuzzy line between good humor and sarcasm and cynicism, but nonetheless, I'd rather have someone try to be funny and fail than just be boring.
And I think honestly in life, when you're around people who are good-natured, who are friendly, but on top of that, who just have a happy sense of humor that's clearly at no one's expense, I find myself drawn to those people, just inadvertently, because you feel like that's truly the nature of what we're aiming for as people. It's very easy to make humor that is cutting, or I mean, I'm no stranger to it in any way, and those things can be funny, perceived as funny, but they don't carry the same, I think, simplicity of the spirit as the right kind of humor. In a way. The right kind of humor, by the way, would be Studio C on BYU TV, everyone.
Are they your new sponsor for Sunday School Bonanza?
They are sponsoring this show. Tune in, everyone.
I too enjoy Studio C.
They have given me $2. $2.
And you have to give one to Al, the other host of This Week in Mormons.
That's pretty much how it is. Then pay taxes, so I have enough to buy, like a Laffy Taffy by the time it's over. Other good points on here. I like the good humor one, because it's so easy to forget that. Glad you pointed that one out, especially because Kurt and I were laughing when I taught this lesson 4 years ago, and I completely cut out the final 3 sections they asked for: friendship, raising children, and good humor. I was like, those are lame. I'm going to insert a section about obedience that I'm finding on my own, which is in the Proverbs. I'm not even going to talk about the obedience one right now, but I think it's also important. Other good stuff, though. Pride, we've spoken about a lot, I think, before. But I want to talk a bit about wisdom, as we soldier on here. Because there's a big difference between being learned and being wise, I think. And definitely in my own personal experience. It is one thing to obtain knowledge. It is another thing to apply knowledge and use that knowledge to set an example and to be able to instruct people accordingly. I feel it's incredibly easy to learn things, but to not actually be wise with what we learn. I don't know if you have any experiences with that, but I have a bucket full, I think, on my lifelong resume.
Yeah, and that's really going back to, I referenced why I started leading LDS. As a young leader, I was thinking, man, I'm making all sorts of mistakes, and I know there's people out there that have been through this and that have better ideas and so forth. And so really the seeking of wisdom is crucial in life and making sure you don't just keep doing dumb mistakes. So so be wise. And I think wisdom, it's not that we always want to equate it with wise old men or anything like that. But wisdom often comes through experience and through time. Mm-hmm. And it even troubles me when I see people, even to this day, when they'll look at our church and say, it's run by a bunch of old guys.
How do they know anything? They're out of touch with what's going on. But the amazing thing is, when you understand the real deeper interactions with those brethren, if you read some of their memoirs or whatever else, they are keenly aware of what's going on in the world. And they use that awareness built upon their decades of experience in dealing with complicated issues, both worldly ones and ones that directly pertain to the church, in helping us to live better lives. And it's so easy to want to second guess for tangible temporal reasons. But we often forget that wisdom comes with a lot of age. And so, President Monson's up into his 80s, but the man has lived through a lot of stuff and seen a lot of things, more so than I think any of us can fathom. And there's a lot to learn from that. I am not wise, especially not in comparison to the prophets, seers, and revelators whom we sustain.
It's true. And that's why we make mistakes about criticizing our spouse in marriage sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of things happen.
We're just not wise.
There's a lot of other interesting things here. I've got a quote here actually about trusting in the Lord. I think this is a great time to ask people what makes them trust God, because I really think that trusting God is something that is learned. And I think we take it for granted, because I think we just assume that people trust God because we have faith. But I believe that learning to trust God actually comes through experience, and it's not necessarily easy for everyone. It's because it's easy to feel abandoned. It's easy to really wonder if our faith will be rewarded, whatever it may be. So here's a kind of a funny little anecdote from Elder W. Craig Zwick of the 70, sort of related to this. He said, "Recently, our daughter and son-in-law were preparing to enjoy an evening together. They were rushing around trying to get ready and give the babysitter some last-minute instructions. They didn't really notice the sad countenance of one of their children and the tears in the eyes of another until they were at the door ready to leave. They realized that their children were apprehensive about their mommy and daddy being away from them. So their parents gathered their 4 precious children around them. Their daddy asked them to put their hands out in front of them. All 8 tiny hands were extended. Mom and Dad then kissed each hand and told them that when they missed them, or they were frightened or needed to feel their love, they could put their little hands up to their cheeks, and they would be able to feel Mommy and Daddy's presence any time. They were so happy. And when our daughter and son-in-law left, they saw 4 little children standing in the window with smiles on their faces and hands on their cheeks. They trusted their parents. They knew they were loved."
I'm weeping.
Are you?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like it. I think a big part of trusting God is knowing that God exists and that God loves you and knows you personally. And if that's something that you struggle with, I think a lot of that can be achieved through prayer, in my experience, through doing the work and hanging in there and pouring out one's sorrows or concerns to the Lord. And those efforts are rewarded eventually, I find.
Yeah, for sure. And the only thing I'll say on this lesson, the last thing anyways that I'll say on this lesson,
sure,
is for those teachers out there, avoid the idea number 3 on additional teaching ideas. I'll leave it at that. Don't do it.
Oh, come on. The virtuous woman? That's our bonus round.
It's a trap.
They can be trusted. They work willingly.
It could go sour really
You're
fast.
a dedicated wife and mother, not a career woman. Look at the third point here, people. My goodness. My goodness. Well, see, there I go again. I'm being humorous at someone's expense. Oh, I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I have to sign off now before I do more damage.
Yep, go read your Proverbs.
Go read your Proverbs, folks. Kurt, thanks for being with us.
It's always a pleasure.
Go visit the man at LeadingLDS. Get better. Subscribe to his podcast. Subscribe to ours. Leave comments, reviews. Those things help us grow, everyone. This is, once again, lesson 31. Happy is the man that findeth wisdom. Sunday School Bonanza, bringing you a gospel